The regular session for the Madison County Board of Education for Thursday, May 20th, 2021 is called to order. Ms. Bates, would you lead us in prayer, please? Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the beauty that you give us in nature, and thank you for the end of school years. Thank you for a time that we can draw things to closure and for our ability to make it through this year. And I pray that as we make decisions for the next upcoming year, that we will be able to be open-minded and fair and follow your will to better students. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated May 20th, 2021.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval for the agenda dated May 20th, 2021. Is there any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the minutes dated April 8th and 22nd, 2021.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation on approval of the minutes dated April 8th and 22nd, 2021. Any discussion, questions on the minutes? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 It is an honor and a privilege for me to be here today and recognize several of our groups. We have our National Board Certified Teachers here. And if you don't know anything about national boards, it is a strenuous, detailed, deep process that teachers go through. And the purpose of that certification is to build capacity within our teachers, to build our students, to give them the absolute best that they can actually have. And so we actually have 8 of our teachers who have gone through national board, and I want to recognize them tonight for a job well done. Not only did they go through board certification, national board certification, but they went through it during a time when it's a pretty tough year, you know. So I do want to recognize some individuals who have made this possible for our teachers. And I mean, partnerships for Madison County is vital. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Elizabeth Fleming, who was with the Schools Foundation, and a special thanks to John Allen of the Committee of 100. And I've asked them to be here and want to give them an opportunity just to greet and say a couple of things about National Board and the work that they've done. They've raised thousands of dollars to support national boards. And this is an investment in our teachers, but it's an investment in our students that will last a lifetime. There's a quote that says that teachers touch eternity because you never know where their influence will end. And investing in national board certification does just that. It reaches students for an entire lifetime. So I want to give them an opportunity to say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. It's truly a pleasure to be with you all tonight. I think of partnerships, and I think of what our community can do when we work together. In my 9 years at the Schools Foundation, I have always seen Madison County Schools step up and say, "You ready for a challenge? Let's do this, and let's continue to make a mark in education in our community and our state." At the Schools Foundation, we focus in pretty much 3 primary areas: philanthropy, and so that is building our endowment, supporting you guys through other economic ways, as well as investing in our teachers, investing in our students through programming, as well as through advocacy. And this campaign, which you'll hear a little bit more about, the Raise Your Hand campaign, where we are sponsoring a total of 500 teachers across all 3 of our districts to reach national board standards, is something that's going to be a game changer and something that this whole nation will look at and say, wow, look what's being done in North Alabama. But really the credit is all due to our teachers that are willing to accept and go for the rigorous process that's involved in that. And when I think about everything that Madison County has done over the years, the big push that y'all made with AP 10 years ago, well, 12 years ago, now the push with National Board, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, and it's exactly why partnerships are formed, because we can do so much more when we work together. And I got to take a second to say, just looking at next what's on the agenda, our athletic piece. congratulations, guys. All of this makes education in North Alabama so powerful. It goes hand in hand. It cannot be solely one component or another. It's the opportunity for our students to have the whole picture, the whole opportunity. So thank you to the board. Thank you for working with us. Thank you for taking big risks and challenges, because it is something that makes the mark in North Alabama so strong. And just kudos to everybody. And I'm going to pass it over to John Allen.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, it's a real honor to be here tonight, and congratulations to the board certified teachers through that process. It's rigorous, it's a game changer, it's generational impact to our students. And the Committee of 100, we are about 275 local business leaders and CEOs, and really appreciate the value that our teachers bring to our community. You're educating our future workforce, our future leaders, nonprofit leaders, elected leaders, and it can't be overstated the value that our teachers have in our community to make our community and region a better place. And so about 2 years ago, we did partner with the Schools Foundation. We partnered with our county leaders and our city leaders in Madison and Huntsville to really say, where can we make generational legacy building impact within our students and within our public education systems. You know, in our community, we're so proud of having the highest concentration of engineers in the country and the highest concentration of PhDs in the country. And we really believe in 5 years, when we get through our Raise Your Hand campaign, we're going to be able to say we have the highest concentration of board-certified teachers in public education in our 3 systems in Huntsville, Madison County. And that is very exciting, long-term generational impact work for our students, generation over generation, in front of our board-certified teachers. And so we have committed to that campaign to raise $1 million to fund those 500 teachers that Elizabeth mentioned in the next 5 years. And publicly, I don't think we've mentioned this publicly, but in the last 4 months since we've really rolled out this campaign, we're now up to around $250,000 of monies already funded for this campaign. So we're 4 months in a 5-year campaign. We're a quarter of the way there. And so the business community and the community at large is really buying into this effort. And we just applaud the efforts of our teachers and the work that you do, and just proud to partner and participate and collaborate with your leadership. So thank you all. We're here for you. We're not going away. We are going to continue this and see it through. And we'll all be on that stage when we say we have that highest concentration in our community in short order. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So what I want to do right now, I'm going to call each one of our National Board Certified Teachers up. I'm going to call you one at a time by name. And if you would just come up and kind of line up right here, because we're going to take some pictures and things of that nature. We do have a wall, a National Board Certified Teachers wall with torches with their names on it out front. So if you're a visitor and you're here, you know, walk by and just kind of see those torches. It's a big deal. So I'm going to start by calling Sharon Freeman, Rick Schomburg, Marsha Asquith, Holly Franklin, Ashley Hill, Tasha Knight, Rebecca Mann, Rebecca McQueen, let's give a hand to our nationally certified board teachers. I also want to thank, and you all stay here, we're going to take some pictures. I do want to thank Miss Nancy, Dr. Curry. She puts in a lot of hours, a lot of time working with our national, our candidates for board certification. So Miss Nancy, thank you for what you do, and thank you for serving Madison County Schools. So we want you to come up also, because you got to get in these pictures also. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth if you'd come up, and John, if you would come up too. We're going to go ahead and take some pictures.
We're just going to do our standard behind.
Yeah, we'll do our standard. We'll do our standard stand. If you all can,
What's the matter?
both sides.
Yeah, everybody. They don't have basketball players 6 feet tall.
We'll squeeze in a little bit. Trust me, you all are not blocking us this time.
Yeah.
Everyone's smiling, I know.
I don't know why I'm smiling under my mask.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
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 How are you?
I also have the privilege and the honor of recognizing two schools that had state championships for track and field. I will say I'm a little partial because not only did I run track, I also coached track when I was in Huntsville City. So with that, I want to recognize Hazel Green High School's track and field state champion, girls 6A, 200-meter dash, Ajah Drake. If you'd come on up, we can recognize you. And we want to ask Ms. Harris if you come on up too, since you're the coach who've kind of pushed and getting them to that championship opportunity. One of them, exactly. They're representing the entire team. So with that, thank you. We appreciate you all, and you all have done a tremendous job. And we want to actually get a separate. Let's get a picture with them as well. You all will stay there, and we'll take a picture. We're going to do the same thing. 200-meter dash, exactly. That's
For me, that's more of like a long haul.
100-meter dash in a competition.
I don't know that-
Fun.
I don't
Happy
know that I
about it.
dash so much. Dashing, that's pretty impressive.
I'll slide. It's like a dash through the snow, right?
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I also want to take an opportunity to congratulate Sparkman High School's girls 7A 4x100 relay team. And so I'm going to call you up also for you to come up and take a picture, and we just want to congratulate you. I know what you went through, okay? I know the days of running and all the stuff that you go into, that you have to do to get ready to do this. And this is a big deal. This is a really, really big deal. Because I know that not only do they sprint and practice sprinting, but they run with long distance. I mean, they do a lot of running in order to get prepared to do this. And not only do they do a lot of running, all of them, Hazel Green, Sparkman, but they're running against some high-level athletes. So if they're state champions, they are smoking fast. So I want to congratulate Amanda Davis, if you'd come on up, Madison Holman, Janae Hillard, and Ayanna Tolbert. Sorry about that. Coach, come on up, too.
They have wings on their shirt.
Yeah.
I think they do on the front.
Yeah, they do. They have wings.
Hey, Coach.
Ladies, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Ms. Harris, Coach Harris, I'm sorry, I forgot to give you all these. You're welcome. All right. All right. All right, informational items, facilities use protocol. Mr. Malone?
All right, thank you, Mr. Perkins and Board, for giving me a few minutes to talk about the facility use data tonight. And really, this is kind of just meant to be discussion. I've got a few slides that I wanted to share with you, and kind of wanted to update all of you on where we are, kind of some conversations that we've had, and kind of get your input, obviously, on this. So, are y'all looking for a way out? Okay. All right. So as far as where we are on it, let me kind of tell you that part first. We have this is something that we've been looking at for a long time, but obviously with COVID, the first part of COVID, we closed our facilities anyway. So I guess this had been put on the back burner a little bit with everything else going on. Well, then through that, one of the projects that we had going on was Sparkman facility, the auditorium. And so now that that's completed and schools, we're hopefully on the backside of COVID, we're getting several more questions. So this is something that we felt we need to go ahead and address pretty quickly. So what we have done already is I'll show you a little bit of data that I have and some research that I've done, trying to get us to a better place with our facility use. And in the process, like I said, I've kind of done some of the research, but I've also run this by our Mr. Perkins C6 committee. So we have a principal from each one of the clusters of high school, got their information, because obviously they're the ones that are in the building. We got their information. I took their feedback, changed the plan a little bit, met with the leadership team, Mr. Perkins' leadership team, got their feedback, changed the plan a little bit. So I thought tonight I could do the same thing with you guys. I'm going to kind of show you what we have right now, get your feedback, maybe change it again, and then we'll hopefully have a more solidified plan in the future. So here are 4 of the things that we're going to talk about: classifications, fees, procedures, and the rental agreement. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about the classifications and the fees. Ms. Thompson and I have been talking a lot about the procedures in the rental agreement and basically just the verbiage in it. And we'll talk about that some here too. But again, before we can kind of solidify that, she's making sure the verbiage is correct on that. So first of all, before I start on it, to let you know, we do have a plan. So I just copied the plan that we have in our policy now. This is our current policy for facility use. I know that's a lot, and you probably don't want to sit there and read that. I did highlight a couple of things of interest. May be used on an expense basis. Part of the problem that we have with the policy, a lot of things are going well. Really, a lot of the things are going well. However, I feel like maybe we're doing something at one school and doing something a little different at another school. So that's another reason why we want to kind of shore this up. But the expense, with the expenses, is everybody charging the same thing? Are principals charging at all? Some of those questions are what have come up. So then I also put that about for long-term use of the building. Do we want to have that in ours? Do we want to have long-term plans, long-term usage of the buildings? And then the other thing in the second paragraph that I have highlighted is the principal, their employee, basically there should be someone on site at all times. Is that going on? So in other words, after digging into the policy, we just want to make sure that we are going to be adhering to whatever policy we put in place. So with y'all's help, we'll develop a plan that we can do that with.
What is it's like from that third sentence, it says from all out-of-town groups. I mean, that just seems like, what is that about?
The third sentence on which paragraph? I'm sorry, Ms. Rucker.
First one.
These
All out-of-town
expenses are
groups.
collected from all out of town.
I mean, that seems strange. What about in town? I mean, what's out of town?
Yeah. Well, and very good question. What about in town? What about out? Anybody that's using the facilities. Again, this is the old policy, and I'm just saying there are some good points, just like what you just said, and that's what leads us to think, do we need to revamp this? Yes. Good question. Okay. So, again, in doing the research, I found that several other systems actually break their users down into different classifications. So, and again, this is just kind of proposed. This is just for discussion at this point. So we had decided, well, maybe we'll break it down into 3 different classes. Class A, school-based organization, which any ball team, band, anything like that belongs to the school. Class B, organizations that provide educational related services or extracurricular activities to our students. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, rec leagues, athletic associations. And then Class C would be anybody that doesn't fall into one of those categories. Now, this is an example of some input that I got maybe for some principals too. If you'll notice down at the bottom, 2 of the notes, one of those says the principal will have the authority to negotiate with the organization if a service is provided, like we have some now that maybe a rec league's using the team and they have someone that maintains the fields or whatever. They could come up with some negotiation on that, so.
Just one thing on that, like, without charging fees to the students, like, I'm thinking some of those things do charge fees, but, like,
You mean some of those organizations
Uh-huh.
that do? Correct, they do.
so why does it say that?
So you're saying basically we should take that out, whether they charge fees or not?
I
Yeah.
don't think those things are free, I think.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the classifications before we go further?
Can you just clarify, Class B, I know Sherry just asked a question. You said organizations that provide education-related services without charging a fee to the students. Does that mean that we don't charge those groups, or does that mean those groups don't charge a fee? What did that mean?
The group doesn't charge a fee.
Okay, but that doesn't, you're not clarifying with that class whether or not we would charge a fee. Okay.
That's right, so we can reword that.
Yeah, I was
Gotcha.
gonna say, 'cause
Okay.
I mean, local rec leagues, the boys, I mean, they all, there's all.
Charge an initial
They
fee.
all charge an
Just take
initial
the-
fee of
just
some
take the whole
kind,
thing
yeah.
out.
Okay, yeah, and I've got that down to take the fee part out, or whether they charge a fee or not for the Class B, yes. Well, and also the last bullet, I didn't make mention of that, I'm sorry. We did want to put on there, staff members are specifically prohibited from the use of school facilities or equipment to conduct private businesses or activities. Because, again, sometimes we found that might happen, so we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Okay, so in the discussion of fees, I've reached out to all of our neighboring systems and actually several others too, but I just wanted to, and I'll kind of explain this chart to you. The way we have this, what we are considering is on the top. And the reason we put it in hour, day, or block is because what I found is all the systems do something a little different. For example, as you notice, Decatur City puts theirs in blocks. It's somewhere between $125 and $250 for a 3-hour block. Limestone County just charges for the day. Huntsville City charges for the hour or for the day. So what we had, again, just proposed for discussion, if you rented a school gym, obviously Class A, you don't pay any fees. Class B, or you don't pay any fees to rent the facility. It would just be for the custodian or for whatever those fees are, and I'm going to discuss that in just a minute. So just to help you kind of read this chart, because the next couple of charts look very similar, it's just specific to that particular building. So Class B, elementary or intermediate school would be $40 an hour or $200 a day. Class C, elementary or intermediate, $60 an hour or $300 a day. So then we broke it down into high school, middle school, or K-8 gym would be grouped together. That was more feedback from the principals as well, because the question was, should we charge as much to rent, Buckhorn or Sparkman High School's gym as we do to rent Walnut Grove's gym? So that's the reason that we changed those things. So the next couple slides are going to look very similar. They're just going to be specific to whatever that particular room or building is. So that's the gym, the cafeteria. If someone rented our cafeteria, so basically $40 an hour to $200 an hour for B, and again, you can read those.
Is the rate, is the cost just a standard cost that you come up with, or is it based on the time it would take for a facilities person to clean it up, or
Yeah.
where the numbers come from?
So that's a good question. The first, again, and kind of reworking this several times, the first thing that we had was I kind of took not necessarily an average, but maybe an average of what other systems were doing. I tried to get a fair cost. But then what's not noted on this is, so we had, that was the fee, but then you needed to pay the $25 an hour for the custodian, plus the site manager, plus the, and I just know it was a little too maybe jumbled up. So we tried to clear, and I'm going to speak to that specifically in just a minute. But these fees include all of those things.
Okay.
So yes, that's a good question. Thank you.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
I mean, to avoid any confusion, because I know we've had confusion in other areas with this, are we including the ninth grade academy in the high school? And if we are, we probably just need to make a note on the bottom that says ninth grade academy is
Yes, sir.
included in high school. So there's no ambiguity.
Yes, that's good point. Yeah. Okay. So again, those are the fees for the cafeteria. Now, again, up for discussion. These are the fees for classrooms. The only, we have had some discussion on, do we even want to rent our classrooms out, or is that going to be something that we just kind of keep off limits? Ms. Thompson and I in discussion today, a lot of our teachers, they may have personal belongings that they leave in there that not feel comfortable with that. But again, other systems are doing it, so we put a rate on there just in case that's what we choose. So for the classroom, now this is probably the biggest one, or maybe for the most discussion, I guess, because of our new Sparkman auditorium. And this would come with a few more, I guess, guidelines, and I'll go over that. And really just specific to the audio video technician and the lighting technician. But again, I've got another slide in just a minute that goes over all that. This is just for the fees.
Jeff, can you go back
Yes, sir.
for a second?
Yeah.
And this kind of applies to all of the things. So this is what was the calculation for a day? How many hours would they have to be in the facility to classify it as a day? Because I mean, if you're there, if somebody's outside the system is using our auditorium for 10 hours a day, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, if you charge it by the hour, that's $2,700. I just was wondering what the calculation was for the day time period. Was it 6 hours? Was it greater
Yeah.
than 4 hours, or?
And we didn't really put a time limit on it. I mean, between the principal and whoever was renting the facility would figure out what's the best. Is it better for them to rent it for $275 an hour, or to just pay $1,200 for the day? I guess that the principal and whoever's renting it would negotiate that, or would work out whichever one's better for them.
Somebody that rents it, not so much that issue, but somebody that rents it for 6 hours versus somebody that rents it for 23 hours, that's a whole lot more expense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you got somebody that comes in and, like Sherry just said, for 6 hours, but you got somebody that's running it for 10 hours, the person running it for 10 hours is getting a whole lot better deal than the guy running it for 6.
Well, and we have to pay the person to be there, so
Correct.
we actually lose money.
Correct. That's why I asked what the formula was for determining a day. Was it 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours? I didn't know what the formula was used to determine what a day is.
Yeah. And, most of the people that there may be some that would request to use it for 23 hours or whatever, but most of them are going to be renting it for within a time to do a production or do something like that. I think,
I would imagine you would have a window of time that it's available, like you wouldn't have it available all day long. Maybe the time it cuts off at, 9 o'clock at night or something.
Well, yes. And so another consideration maybe to all those points is just to have a cap,
And this is just the first draft, just the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
look draft of it. And so, if we want to adjust and put a cap on a particular day or something, that's something we can definitely easily make happen.
Yeah.
Or
Again, these are great. This is what I'm wanting to know. What questions you guys have when you look at this? How do you think we can solidify this?
yeah.
So then another question that some of the principals had, we had all of this data, but didn't have anything on outside facilities. So they wanted us to come up with a good number for outside facilities as well. So again, right now, these are the numbers that we're discussing. And we did break that into elementary, intermediate, high school, middle school too. But yes, we can add the Sparkman 9. And those facilities probably would just be specific to baseball, softball, football, soccer, and track. And not all schools are going to have those.
How would this work for like Central School when the rec league is on school property?
Yeah. So with Central, I think we've got them in the K-8. And when you say how would it work, you mean like as far as what fee it would be?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they would fall under B, but that may be one where, kind of like I said on one of those other slides, that, I think Central Facility, I think they, the Athletic Association is providing a service for them, so that would be between
Is that something
them
that
and
can
the
be worked
principal.
out with? Is that something that can be worked out with that organization and the principal that
Yes.
doesn't have to come through us?
Right, right.
Because I know that CYAA built a field for the school, so I mean, it'd be kind of hard to charge CYA to use the field, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I think they provide the service for mowing the
Right.
grass and stuff too, so yeah. And again, that's why we wanted to put that in there, just so that they would have that option, yes.
Well, and that does bring up an issue of equity in that, for instance, the baseball and softball field at Riverton Intermediate that our local rec leagues use, who are tax-paying parents who are already paying for the school through their tax dollars, the difference between using those fields that are not upkept, they don't have lights, they don't have bags, they don't have painted lines, they don't, the difference in using those fields and using the fields that are kept up at Central are two very different accommodations. The
Yeah.
same as not all of us have auditoriums, so the ability for Sparkman to make money off of their auditorium and the rest of us don't have that option brings up the element of equity and how we make sure that those things are equitable across. So, and I also, RIS and some of our other intermediates, we'd have to decide where they go as well as far as elementary versus middle schools in their facility fee management.
It would,
I just think we need to look at an equity piece a little bit because that fee is not the same across. And I do have some heartburn, I guess, with our local rec leagues not being able to use their local school as well as they have been. I mean, most of those kids attend that school, and I think they kind of feel that's their school already.
Yeah.
So we may just have to look at how we're going to handle those things that have been in place for a very long time already.
right.
Of course, there are auditoriums at New Hope and Madison County, too.
I would not say that again, that goes back to the equity piece. The size and the ability to use those for the same types of activities are very different.
Yeah. And just to answer the question on the intermediate and Morris Mill, we'd group them right now with the elementaries, with the elementary schools.
Yeah, and
But
I would
but
think
I
that-
understand yours is more of an equity question than
Well,
grade
and
specific.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I just wanted to, much like the ninth grade question. But I do think we'll have to look at, and maybe that's I don't know if that's a principal decision at the time, but I do think the difference between using a softball field somewhere else and using the one in the back half of Riverton that hasn't been used in, I mean, I personally could not charge somebody to use that field to practice on. I mean, that batting cage is older than my first car.
Well, I would imagine there would be an assessment on a site-to-site basis.
Yeah,
And
I
look
just,
at situations like we have at Central. That one may not even be a facility that's part of the scope. I don't know. That
Yeah.
may be something that, there's a different consideration, but certainly there's gonna have to be a facility-by-facility assessment to see
Yeah.
where it fits in here.
That's what I was wondering, if it was gonna be like straight down the middle, or is it gonna be flexibility? Because the way Central has it worked out with their rec league, I mean, the rec league built a concession stand that they let the school use. I mean, it's kind of like they're just a partner,
Yeah.
Right.
which works out better than exchanging money.
Yeah, so those situations exist, I'm sure, in different ways in different facilities. So
Right.
we're gonna have to have some assessment per facility to see what changes will be reflective of that particular
Yeah,
facility.
so what we could, so again, kind of the way this has evolved even to where it is now. At first, we just had one price just for all facilities. Then we decided to break it down into the elementary, intermediate, middle. So maybe a better idea is each specific facility,
Yeah.
so.
I don't want to make it too cumbersome. I just want to make sure that we have thought about that point while we move through
Yeah,
deciding how to do this.
Or make this the starting point, and then they can negotiate off of these hourly or daily
Yeah.
fees based on
Because even like
the
baseball
condition of the
fields,
facility or whatever the
yeah,
case may
whether or
be.
not they're lit is a big deal.
Sure.
sure.
Or whether or not they have actual.
I mean,
benches.
this could be the the maximum we charge, but if the principal wants to negotiate down based on something, we could always give the principal that authority.
And I think we do in this, correct?
Yes.
Give the principal
Yeah.
the ability to negotiate. In
Correct.
doing that, though, we have to be careful as well.
True.
We can't negotiate this with this and this. Just gets a little
Consistent.
scary, a little hairy.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to
Make
be as
sure we're aware of
standardized as possible, exactly. Okay, any more questions about this particular slide? So now we've looked at each particular or part of the facility. This one, the next this says the same thing, but it's a little easier to read. It's just kind of a snapshot of what only Madison County would propose for each section: the auditorium, the gym, the cafeteria, the classroom, and outdoor facilities. So again, a little easier to read. Now, this slide in conjunction with the next slide, Mr. Curry, I think will answer your question, I think. So in trying to clean the document up a little bit, this, if this is what we go with, this facility, this fee would cover everything. Instead of saying, well, you owe X amount to rent the facility, and then you need to pay for the custodian and for the site manager. So I can switch back and forth to these if I need to, but this is kind of the second part of that. Again, these are the fees. This is what the fees cover. So there would be a site manager, and again, we kind of break it down to the $30 an hour with a 3-hour minimum. There would need to be a custodian. The lighting and sound technician, that would only be for the auditorium. And then for the CMP employees, that would only be for the cafeterias. There could be some exceptions. This is just an example, but I've got down there kind of in bold, I guess. One of these workers would need to be present, obviously. However, this is just kind of an example. If somebody was using our auditorium, yes, we want to be very, I guess you could say, strict on that as far as the audio and the video and the lighting. However, if somebody rents our facility for something and they don't need that, then we could negotiate that part of it. If they need audio and video and they need to use our board, what we don't want is just anybody using our PA systems and things like that, because obviously there's a lot of money in those. But if they don't need sound or they don't need lighting or whatever, then we could look at those things. And
I got a question about say a custodian is needed for 4 hours.
yes.
How do they get their $100?
Yeah, so that's part of kind of the rental procedure. What whoever's renting the facility would do, they would fill out that form, and then they're going to send that check, through the principal to the school system.
And then the
They would
school
take-
system's gonna cut them a check?
Yes.
And it's gonna be $25 or what they make an hour?
Well, again, that part's up for discussion too. We have on there, what is custodian? I think we've got $25 an hour. Because normally that's extra work, something they're doing above and beyond their typical week.
I'm good with it. I was just making
Yeah.
sure that we wasn't gonna get $25 an hour and send them $13.85.
Right. No, those particular fees would be for exactly what it
Okay.
states.
But
Yes.
somebody that makes whatever they make, plus the benefits, might equal the 25.
I was just making sure they got the full 20.
Yeah, and we weren't just upcharging for
Right.
that.
That was my wonder, if they considered a contracted employee at that point, or are they gonna make their current salary, which may, with salary and benefits, go over the $25 an hour mark? That's just what we've decided to
Yes.
charge, so.
Right. Right. Yeah, okay.
So, well, let me ask this question. What is currently done? If we had a situation that,
So what's currently done is different at other schools.
an example.
For the most part, what they would do, I'll tell you what a lot of them do. I know this for a fact. If they rent to if one of the schools is renting to or letting a rec center use their facilities, then they have it scheduled to where they already have a custodian there working, and it's just, they say, hey, y'all can use the gym till 9 o'clock, and then at 9 o'clock, it's that custodian's duty to clean the gym up. But that's part of their normal duty, I don't know that anybody's doing this, what we're saying.
So they're normally scheduled to be there at that time anyway.
That's right.
Gotcha, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Jeff, can you go back one slide real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Explain to me what if I'm renting the auditorium for $175 an hour, that's just money to just rent the facility. That's it.
Yes. I mean, well, but that 175 covers your everything.
That covers what? Go to the next slide. So that 175 covers the site manager.
Yes. Yes.
So go back another slide. So what you're saying is they have to rent that auditorium for a minimum of 3 hours.
Yeah, we probably need to have a minimum on there, and I didn't have that on there. Actually, I was as I was talking about this, and I've looked at this slide probably 300 times. But yes, we probably need to have a minimum on that as well to make sure that what they're paying doesn't, what we're paying our people is not more than what they're. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's an hourly rate, it needs to be the minimum because it is on our others. Yes.
Right.
You can just
Can I
come to
back-
Madison. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, bro.
I was gonna say, you can come to Madison County and rent their auditorium, get a cafeteria for free, can't you?
Well,
Same with Riverton Elementary.
There you go.
It's all the same.
yeah. Well, if we get a cafeteria, though, we do have to have the CMP
Right.
work.
So I'm assuming we have a problem, or is this just a situation to help with the auditorium at Spartan?
So-
I just
so-
want to or we just want to be consistent? Is that?
Yeah,
what-
that's a
Remind
good-
me what what the scope is for?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we've talked about that a lot, on is there a problem?
Yes.
Actually, so I know I kind of started this off by saying we have a policy and it's kind of vague, and maybe this principal's doing this and this principal's doing this. But actually, do we have a problem? We really don't have a big problem. What I mean by that is, and this was pointed out by a member of one of the leadership team the other day, if you go by the majority of our facilities, they look good, they're being well kept for the most part. Principals take ownership of their buildings, things are going well, so that's been part of the discussion. I mean, yes, we want to be unified and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing, but, right now, things are actually going well, yes.
Well, and I would say our rec leagues are mostly our kids, and so I
Yes.
know most of us would beat our children to an inch of their lives if they didn't leave that the same way they leave school.
Right.
I think our rec leagues do a great
Well-
job at respecting our property.
So not to just point one out, but one I've worked with a lot with Mount Carmel Rec is what they used. I know it's a different name now, but at one point when I was a principal at Riverton, they called, and I think the number was like 48 or so. They had 48 basketball teams and only one small gym here to practice. So obviously that's one of the reasons they reach out. So whenever I met with them and said, well, okay, we need to make sure we'll talk about the rules. Well, they obviously, yes, to your point, we wanted to work as a community, and these schools are pillars of the community. So we wanted to work with them. If we ever saw anything, and again, we talk about rules and policies, and if somebody spilt a Dr. Pepper in the gym and it was brought to their attention, they wanted to make sure that was cleaned up. And that kind of goes back to what we were saying. The way things are working now, things are going well. But again, we have more facilities now, and just thought that maybe we should look at things on a
Well,
grander scale, I
I
guess you
do
could
think
say.
it's good to have a structure and some guidance for schools, especially the auditorium. That's a completely new facility, but at the same time, if it's not broke, you just create some guidance and say, hey, look, keep doing what you're doing. We don't have an issue where facilities are being damaged or destroyed, or maintenance is slack on it. Folks are doing it during their working hours. It's already scheduled. We don't have a wage and hour issue. I think you could potentially create more issues if you kind of narrow it so focused. Well, right now it's flowing pretty well, but certainly with the auditorium, there's something we need to consider and putting some guidance around that. But I think keeping it flexible is healthy for those schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a number of years, I don't know when we started it, but years ago, I created a facility use agreement form, and Carrie used that, different schools use it. Some schools still use it, I think it's fallen by the wayside in some schools. But from a legal perspective, the goal is to protect you from liability for someone who's injured, if they're at a rec league ball game, or a student that's injured, or something that if you're not in supervision of, not in control of. And so that's one of the things that Mr. Malone and I have talked about is updating that, and we're gonna work on that together.
Hey Cindy, can you cut your microphone on? They're saying they can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that would be the concern, would be to make sure that you're covered from a
Sure.
liability perspective, and that these groups have insurance, all these rec leagues have insurance. And you have some long-standing agreements with some of these rec leagues. I have files in the office. You have long-standing agreements with, HAP and HEALS and New Hope Children's Clinic for those kind of things. Y'all dealt with those. Y'all remember dealing with some of those in the past. So the idea would be to get it all documented and make sure it's equitable on who's using I think that's what you're trying to do. And if you've got a group like Mr. Brooks explained that's built the fields and do those things, then you document that in an agreement, you document that the insurance is met, and then everybody's protected.
I got a question, like, we, at CYAA, they carry their own insurance in case a kid gets hurt or something, and everything that we do is, everything, like she says, documented. But say the auditorium at Sparkman, what if somebody sets it on fire? I mean, accidentally, but I mean, how's that covered? Is the school system liable for that, or is that some sort of type of insurance that
Yours,
Do you mean while a production's going on?
if something happens and it
Yeah.
sets on, if something happens and
Yeah,
it
that-
accidentally catches on fire?
your standard requirement in the agreement is $1 million coverage, and that sounds like a lot, but to get an endorsement for the school system, like for a one-day event for $1 million policy, is not excessively expensive.
Are you gonna make that needs to be like a requirement, I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it currently is in your form agreement that some of your schools are using.
And
So is there an intent to tie the facilities use agreement with this policy?
yes,
Okay.
yes. I mean, that's kind of all part of it. This is just the fee part of it. So the other, in fact, not to go into much detail on this, but yes, these are things that so basically, we have the form that and again, this is kind of what Ms. Thompson and I are working on, but the form that would actually be used to fill out the steps, step 1, step 2, meet with the principal, the fee schedule. Now, we did go over the fee schedule pretty heavily, but, and then rules and regulations, just things that, obviously, they're, like I said, a lot of the rules, each principal kind of sets whatever those rules may be. We just want to make sure that we have have those rules.
So if a local church or somebody wants to come in and put on a production of something in in the Sparkman Auditorium or in any one of the school's auditoriums or facilities, they're required to have the $1 million coverage?
They're supposed to.
They should.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not expensive.
No, it's not. I just was.
It's not cost prohibitive at all.
Yeah.
And that is in there as well. That is in that use form. And again, some things that we definitely, at least, and again, the verbiage, we're still looking at that, but things that we know that we want to try to prohibit. I mean, and most of these are just common sense,
And I understand the idea of giving discretion, but there probably needs to be some oversight to that to make sure that those other requirements are being met just for your protection.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, you have a baseline that you have to follow. There's some mandatory minimums. I do think, though, to still give them some flexibility to make some decisions. I don't want to have it so tight where they're restricted, or they got to go by the letter of a fee arrangement,
But you could have discretion for those organizations that have made significant capital contributions. You could put a footnote that says that have made significant capital contributions to the school, and then you document that in the agreement itself. You would say, in lieu of the fee, they've built the field, or they've remodeled or built bathrooms, or all, whatever we can work on that. We can work on that language.
Just give them some flexibility.
And again, just some things, I mean, I've had them up there for a minute, but just some things that we know we want to try to prohibit. One of the biggest things, and this has come up a few times with a couple of different groups, the second point there, school facilities cannot be used for political gain or to promote any political agenda. Just things like that. So we do have that in our policy, but again, Mr. Thompson's kind of shoring all that up for us, so.
So number 3 that we just bypassed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Huntsville City, I believe, allows that. We are choosing not to.
At this time, yes. So so the question, if you didn't hear, the question was, number 3, school facilities cannot be used for recurring religious events, worships, or activities. Somebody using our facilities, if they want to book a school gym for the next 6 months for their worship service, we were at this point, we're not going to allow
Our
that.
current policy, or do we just make that policy?
Yeah, that's one that would be in our new policy. The document that Ms. Thompson's referring to, I'm not sure if that was in there or not, but
I
that,
think it was,
I think
yeah.
it, I think
Yeah,
it's in there. 'cause
that's
we had
been your
one.
consistent practice.
I know that's been our standard is to
Well,
not,
on my time on the board, we did have a church that requests to use the facility,
We've discussed this before.
and we
Had
had a
several
discussion.
requests.
Yeah,
And
we've had,
them request to use football auditoriums as well for like summer camps and that sort of thing.
yeah.
And in the past, we have said no based on the fact that to us, what is religious and what other people consider religious can be two different things. And we would have to treat each of those with the same amount of access to that facility once we did it. And of course, the extreme was if you said that a Baptist group could come and then a witch haven, I think that's what they're called, wanted to, we would have nothing to stand on because they consider themselves a religion as well. And so to avoid that, making decisions on which religions we agree with or disagree with or should have on a school campus, we said no religious activity. That has been several years ago that we had that discussion.
We also had the discussion too, where if a church had, and through a natural disaster or whatever, if potentially granting them a limited time period to use an auditorium or gymnasium, but for a very limited time, and I don't think we approved that either.
Any other questions on this part? Okay, so that actually concludes the presentation. However, and I know, I've written down several questions, so kind of now where we are in the process, I've met with several different groups, and now met with you guys, and I've got all of these noted. Continuing to work with Ms. Thompson, and I will continue to try to shore this up, and then have a further discussion with you guys. Any other things that you can think of, any other questions or at this time?
If they use our concession facilities, like at the fields or the auditorium, should we charge for that?
Those wouldn't be included in what we've talked about right now.
Would or would not?
Would not,
Would not. That's what I thought you said.
no. I mean,
The problem with that is that your booster groups leave all their
Right.
the Coke stuff and the Coke products and the fountain drinks are theirs, and so I don't know how you would
That would have to be,
vacate that space and let another group use it.
It's
Yeah, we
extremely
currently-
difficult to secure that stuff.
I mean, we allowed groups to use our concession stand if they wanted to, but then we had to have one of our board members or booster members was there to monitor it. But it's between the organization and the booster organization, not necessarily between the school.
and the times that we've had a similar situation, usually the school manages the concessions and the outside group does whatever they need to do. So for example, when they have AAU tournaments at Hazel Green, the boys or girls basketball team will man the concessions during that. So there's always a school component with the concession.
Fundraiser for the school?
I'm sorry?
Fundraiser for the school
Yeah.
then?
Yeah, fundraiser for the school.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think that needs to be addressed however, but it
Yeah.
doesn't need to
Whatever it
be
looks
just left
like.
out, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions about anything that we've discussed?
I wanted to say thank you. I realize that this is a very big topic and something that needs to be addressed. I don't think that it's not important, and I realize there's lots of pieces that go into this. So thank you for initiating, tackling this, and for, so I don't want to at all sound like I'm being negative. I do appreciate the work you've put into this. I'm just curious whether we have at any point, and I know I keep bringing up rec, but have we looked at how often our rec leagues are currently using our facilities? And have we talked to those rec directors about the impact that will have on kids being able to continue to participate there?
I have not met with any of them, no.
Okay.
No.
And I'm not saying that's necessarily something that 100% has to be done. I just wondered if we had done that.
Well, and I haven't met with them. However, I do know that they rely heavily on the schools. I mean, I've been in the system for 23 years, and for 23 years, they've been using it pretty heavily, you know, that I know of, so.
Yeah, I just know that, and I understand that school and other things are not all athletics, but athletics at that age definitely provide an outlet for kids to learn a lot of things that are important moving forward, and not all those kids will have the opportunity to participate in high school sports. And so that kind of 8 to 14 bracket is I think pretty important for those kids to be able to participate, and a lot of those parents can't afford high school sports because we all know sports are no longer state funded. So by the time you get to high school, you got to be able to shuck out a pretty big dollar. And so the rec leagues allow some of that activity and some of those opportunities for kids. So I just don't want to put us in a position where we're making it a hardship for them to be able to offer that to our communities.
Right.
But I do appreciate you taking this on, and I'm happy to work through this. It's a very big undertaking to change something that is as useful as our facilities are.
Thank you.
Go back to the auditorium slide for just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
So under Class C, we're like $100 less than Huntsville City. Is that
That's right.
make sense, or is that just,
For Class C, yes.
we don't necessarily, are we trying to attract people or
Are we trying to what? I'm sorry.
attract people?
Well, no, ma'am. We're not trying to match any of, this is just kind of data. This is what other systems are doing. So we're not trying to, just because one system's doing it, that doesn't mean that's exactly what we're going to do. Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
No.
Didn't know if we just want to match that or not.
Yeah, that's, we could, but, that wasn't the intent, to just do what one of the others is doing, but so you're saying it need to be a little more?
I wouldn't make it at 13. I wouldn't want to just lure people in, I guess. You know.
Okay. Okay.
Little ball in Huntsville City.
Well, Huntsville's got, 6.
It's got
or
like
seven-
a
6 or
bunch of
7
auditoriums. Yeah.
We got one at New Hope in Madison County.
Correct. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Malone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Administrative items. Item A, I recommend approval of the grade configuration and attendance zone for the New Hope area schools as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the grade configuration and attendance zone for the New Hope area schools. Any discussions? If there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Item B, I recommend approval of the crossing guard memorandum of understanding between the Madison County Sheriff's Office and Madison County School System for 2021, 2022 as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation and approval of the crossing guard memorandums of understanding contract between the Madison County Sheriff's Office and the Madison County School System for 2021, 2022. Any discussion?
I had one question. On the floaters, I think there's 2 floaters or 2. So if nobody's sick, then they potentially just get paid and don't participate.
However, they haven't filled those positions.
They have not filled
We
them?
have not filled them. Those positions haven't been filled.
We don't intend
The
to?
sheriff's office is actually working towards utilizing our SROs more for the crossing guard piece and starting to phase out the crossing guards. They're just not there yet, which is why we wanted, for one more year, we want to approve this contract.
Okay, so they've never been in place to begin with, these two floaters?
I do not believe they filled those positions.
Okay.
They're on the contract, but they have not been filled because they can't, typically they cannot keep crossing guards in place. We have, I think, 2 or 3 of them we can keep in place on a regular basis, but they're constantly trying to hire different crossing guards because people work for a little while and they don't want to do it anymore.
Okay.
After they stand out in the rain. Any further discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item C, I recommend approval of the April financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommended approval of the April financial statements and payment of bills as submitted. Any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item D, I recommend approval of bids and bid renewals as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommended approval for bids and bid renewals as submitted. Any discussion? Karen's
Karen's
on.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
I
is.
just want to say that, and I know Karen was probably as active in this as part of the Alabama Association of School Business Officials, but the competitive bid exemption, which was a Senate or House bill, H-18, exempts county and school systems that participate in national and regional cooperative lease purchasing agreements will no longer be required to competitively bid those goods or services. So I was wondering, Karen, could you briefly explain how this will or will not affect us here in Madison County Schools?
Yes, sir. That pertains to the, when we have leases in place. We're already authorized by the state to buy off purchasing co-ops, national co-ops, because they've already gone through the bid process. So instead of doing a local bid for those, we can buy off purchasing co-ops. However, when that law was first passed, they didn't include leases. For example, copier leases and things of that nature. So unless we were doing an outright purchase of a copier, that's the main item we lease. We couldn't purchase in co-ops. And so we would, for rental leases and things of that nature. So we've been trying to get this changed for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So that now when we're leasing copiers, we can buy from these purchasing co-ops without actually purchasing the copier outright. It's copiers, printers, and things of that nature that we can, that all that does, it is a big help for the central office as well as our local schools. Because we lease those things for 3 years and then they're worn out and they swap them out. So we do a lot of rental leases. Capital leases, we were able to do purchasing costs. This will just eliminate us having to bid those locally. If we can get the best deal, which we have been able to by doing some research from a purchasing co-op or a state bid.
Okay. Well, thanks, Karen.
That's the change.
I saw this, and I just thought it was interesting that we were doing the bids tonight, and I thought I'd have you explain that if necessary. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item E, I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the contracts for services as submitted. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item F, I recommend approval of the personnel items, addendum, non-renewal, and temporary release list for certified and support employees as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval for personnel items, addendum as submitted, non-renewal, and temporary release list for certified and non-support employees. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item G, I recommend approval of the supplemental contracts and the discontinued contracts as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of supplements and discontinued contracts as submitted. Any discussion? Questions? There are none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that takes care of administrative items. I have one additional administrative items for the board. Found out last week in talking with Cynthia, there was a lot of confusion once COVID hit last year about whole board training, individual board training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We did not conduct, it was my understanding that we didn't have to do whole board training last year because of COVID, but that isn't correct. So we have to squeeze in a whole board training between now and the end of June. In talking with Cynthia, Nathan, and Mr. Perkins, we decided to go ahead and do the whole board training at the offsite that we're doing on the Thursday prior to the AASB conference in Gulf Shores. This prevents us from having to come in again for 2 or 3 hours sometime between now and then. We're going to do it on Title IX, correct, Cynthia?
That's right.
And we're going to do it immediately after the offsite meeting. So that ends about 2. We'll take a quick 15-minute break. We'll come back in. We'll do our training for 90 minutes or 2 hours, and we should be done between 4 and 4:15 on that Thursday.
That's for last year or this year?
It'll be for last year because it's the training goes from 1 July to 30 June, so it'll cover the 2020 to 2021 school year.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll end up having to do another whole board training after July 1st again.
Okay.
But it was my understanding that because of COVID and that nobody from Montgomery was going to travel up to do the training, that they were kind of like waiving it. That apparently wasn't true. So that's a hit on me, and I apologize for the last minute thing there. But we've got it covered, and I think doing it down at the conference will prevent us from having to come in one other time.
I just wanted to say, administrative item A, just publicly, I don't know how many of y'all know all that goes into that. That has to be federally approved, and there are a lot of people that do a lot of work behind the scenes. There's a lot of paperwork and submissions and just a lot. And so I know that if I start naming people, I will leave someone out, but I just want everyone to know that took a lot of effort, and it sounds simple on paper, and it took about 30 seconds to approve, but there were hundreds of hours that went into that, and I appreciate what those of you in the room here and those of you who are not here did to get that accomplished. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We do have an executive session. Ms. Thompson, you have a certification?
I have a certification for eminently likely if the board chooses a particular course of action.
Okay. So we will adjourn into executive session here. We will not, there's nothing to, when we come back from executive session, we'll just adjourn for the evening. You're more than welcome to hang around and wait until that happens, but it's up to you. Anything else for the good of the board? Any other items?
Here's the certification.
Okay. All right. I'll need a motion and a second to move into executive session.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second to move into executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned into executive session.